5 years ago, almost nobody would have been able to picture this scene. 24-year-old Hannah Strom is holding her own at the ping pong table. She's here visiting Spaulding Rehabilitation Hospital in Boston with her mom and dad.
Hi, Abigail.
It's so good to see you, Hannah.
Spaulding was Hannah's home for almost 4 months as she worked to heal and recover after a devastating traumatic brain injury. The morning of Wednesday, January 15th, 2020, Hannah was in a terrible car crash with her college rowing team.
Tom called and he just said, "You need to come home." And I said, "Well, why?" And he just, said, "You need to come home."
Hannah experienced a severe traumatic brain injury. At the moment of impact, there was swelling, an increase in pressure within her brain, small areas of bleeding, and all of these types of injury together contributed to causing her to be in a coma, completely unresponsive.
Hannah was on the edge of survival in what doctors now call a disorder of consciousness.
We're at a point now in medical technology and knowledge where we can almost save anybody's life, even the most severe injuries. We can keep the body going. That's not the whole story. The question is, how much of the brain can we rescue?
I was focused on trying to, have her wake up. I was definitely in denial, thinking she was going to wake up the next day.
Hannah would not regain consciousness for weeks.
The dilemma that we have is that in those first few days, we don't really know which patients are going to go on to substantially recover and which patients are either going to die or be left with very severe disability for the rest of their lives.
Dr. Joe Giacino is project director for the Spaulding Harvard TBI Model System Center.
There is a rush to judgment that occurs where there is the need to make a decision about whether we're going to treat this person aggressively after this severe injury. And the problem is that that decision most often gets made within 72 hours of injury.
The leading cause of death in those first 3 days is not the brain injury. It's the withdrawal of life-saving medical care.
The neurobiology recovery doesn't follow that time frame. We know now that it takes substantially longer than 72 hours for people to begin to express signs of consciousness. They're just not there yet. The brain's not ready to manifest those signs. So we have a situation where operationally we're making the gravest decision one can make about a human being in a time frame that doesn't match the biology of recovery.
One of the most important lessons of the last several decades of research in our field is that of prognostic humility. We as clinicians need to acknowledge to families that there is a range of possible outcomes, and multiple studies have shown that the manner in which we as clinicians communicate with families is the primary determinant of their decisions about whether to continue or withdraw life-sustaining therapy.
After 6 days in a Florida intensive care unit, Hannah was flown back to Boston for treatment at Massachusetts General Hospital, and her family embarked on a long journey of uncertainty.
I would ask, all the doctors, therapists. I would ask strangers, do you think she'll walk again? Do you think she'll live on her own? Will she talk again? Will she just be herself?
So you were constantly...
Neurorehabilitation specialist Dr. Ron Hirschberg was one of the people charged with trying to answer those questions. He first met Hannah 7 days after her injury.
The first thing that we did was observe and see if she was interacting with her environment at all, if she was moving spontaneously, moving her limbs, moving her head around.
Hannah was not.
They sort of paved a path to expect, maybe that she might not recover, and I don't think they thought she should.
We weren't sure. A lot of people weren't sure within the first couple weeks that we got to know her.
15 days after her injury, Hannah still was not spontaneously opening her eyes, but she would open them in response to touch.
We tested her corneal reflex that was intact bilaterally, and we knew that she had a gag reflex with the endotracheal tube. So those were all relative positive signs that her brainstem was getting back online, so to speak.
Part of Dr. Hirschberg's job was to help decide if Hannah was a good candidate for inpatient rehabilitation at Mass General's partner institution, Spaulding Rehabilitation Hospital.
It was February 3rd that someone had noticed that there was a difference in her eyes, very subtle. And when something's very subtle, you need to prove it. You need to keep on examining. I remember specifically she was able to look to one side. With multiple trials, was able to fixate on a mirror.
This was a big moment for Hannah, being able to respond to something in the world, and her responses grew over the next days.
She was starting to become conscious. She was starting to look around the room. We knew that she was getting into this next phase of recovery where she would start to participate and get better and better.
Decisions made and treatments given during those first few weeks saved Hannah's life. What happened next would determine what kind of life it would be. The team moved Hannah to Spaulding Rehab.
We don't really understand yet what the true active ingredients of rehabilitation are. It is certainly the case that we can help neurons reconnect by repetitions. How do you build a muscle? By doing reps. Doing the same thing functionally can increase neuronal connectivity and restore function.
Hey, Hannah. How are you?
Beth Hansen is the therapy manager on the brain injury floor at Spaulding. Her team began treatment for Hannah right away, even though Hannah's level of consciousness was very low, what is called minimally conscious.
We work on positioning in the wheelchair, in the bed. We use something called a tilt table when people are first starting out so that we can start them laying flat and then gradually get them to a near standing position so that their body can get used to being more upright.
Less than 15% of people with injuries like Hannah's ever get the chance to have inpatient rehabilitation like she got at Spaulding. Around 85% will most likely go home or to a long-term care facility where the people who will take care of them don't have the training to do it. There are a lot of complicated reasons for this, including healthcare policies.
If you're in the United States and you have a severe brain injury, in all likelihood, you're going to get state-of-the-art care, and your life is going to be saved. And we spare no expense in doing that.
What happens next is the issue.
That's the critical point. That's where these rules kick in about who gets to go to inpatient rehab. So because it's 15% of individuals who get through that door, that means more than 85% are not going to get in, and basically they fall off a cliff at that point.
You lost consciousness.
One of the major challenges is that current regulations around rehab hospitals require active participation from the patient, which is not possible for people in disorders of consciousness.
So that might be something I look at.
Dr. Giacino and other researchers are working to generate more evidence of the benefits of inpatient rehab for severe traumatic brain injury, or TBI. Their approach includes ongoing evaluation of patient progress and communication among members of the rehab team.
And when he's doing things that are complex like calculations, he's accurate?
He's accurate, I'd say like 90% of the time.
Today they are discussing a current patient, 20-year-old Theo Visco, who was injured in a downhill ski crash in Vermont just 3 weeks ago.
I can see the difference in my writing from like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I couldn't even like move my right hand, and now this is where it is. Better than most of my parents' handwriting.
That's true.
Yeah.
Theo's consciousness has returned relatively quickly compared to Hannah's due to differences in their injuries.
I didn't see any mention of whether there was...
Today, the team is discussing Theo's impulse control.
Can you tell me what the impulsivity looked like? Examples of...
It was a lot, in our sessions, it was a lot of just trying to stand and walk from wherever we were.
So safety issues, starting without taking precautions on...
Yes. There was a big deficit with like his right leg and foot where he was kind of like crumpling anytime he would stand.
To work on both impulse control and control of his right leg, the team would mix physical therapy with neurologic music therapy. giving Theo a steady rhythmic cue for his brain to respond to.
She said, I'm just gonna just strum and just listen, and she started to bump to the music and strumming. And he was just listening to music and walking better than I'd ever seen. She would speed it up and he would go a little faster, and then she'd say, I'm gonna change the rhythm, and you could see it.
He's at a level where he can be doing all of his daily routines of bathing, dressing, the basic stuff, with someone just within arm's reach, if he's not having to walk.
Yeah. And that's because the impulsivity is still there?
No, it's just because he'll need hands-on assistance to make sure he's steady enough, because he's ambulating without a
physical
device.
Problems. Yeah.
Yes. He knows, he's great. He'll ask every time before he stands up if it's okay, if I'm ready. That insight and impulsivity has improved substantially.
After their discussion, Theo joins the team so that Dr. Giacino can demonstrate how he assesses someone at Theo's level of recovery.
If I do that, all right, here we go.
Dr. Giacino and his colleagues will use what they learned here today to make adjustments in Theo's treatment.
Oh.
No, you're good. You're good. I screwed up. That gives you a chance to screw up too. So.
When Hannah was 4 weeks out from her injury, the team was looking for much more subtle improvements. Her mom and dad witnessed one 7 weeks after the crash.
So Hannah's dad, on March 4th, it was his birthday. He came to visit.
I had to leave by 4 so I wouldn't hit the traffic and to get back to work. And I reached over and kissed her, and she squeezed my hand. For me, that was a sign that it's going to be okay, but that's what I felt that day.
You look amazing!
4 days later, Hannah's primary physical therapist remembers noticing Hannah's consciousness emerging. Here's PT Abigail Spaulding.
We wrapped her hands onto the machine, and she started trying to pull her hands out. And at first we were like, well, that's not what we're trying to do. But at that point, she was still in a minimally conscious state. And so it was pretty amazing to kind of just see that moment.
Oh, so you're going to do it that way instead? Well, so you got to pull this out. See, that's got to get
She was clearly trying to figure out how to get her hands out of these wraps. It was just like, all right, she's in there.
Speech was a challenge for Hannah for a long time. But with months of daily work from Hannah, her mom, and her team of therapists, she slowly recovered her ability to talk.
What's Dad's name? Who am I?
Gail.
My name's Gail. What's your name?
Hannah.
What's your brother's name?
David.
Hannah's progress accelerated. By June, it was time to go home.
When I left, anyone that touched her life here, I wrote a card out to each one, and in Abigail's, I wrote, I wish you could come home with me, because I meant that.
Hannah's father and her brother David were preparing their house for Hannah's return.
We put 2 shower handles, just lock them on the wall. We installed a ramp.
When I went home, it was also a crazy experience because the streets of my town in Marion were filled with people. Just everyone, they were so excited to see me, come home. But I still didn't know why they were all so excited to see me. I had felt like I had only been away for, a day.
Part of the support that Spaulding provided was continuing therapy at home for Hannah.
The therapist would come see her, and she was lifting weights, and I think they were 2-pound weights. And she looked at me like, I don't want to do this, because she didn't need to do that. She goes, I want to walk. We just made her walk further every day. Whether it was 10 feet or 1 foot, but every day we went out, we went further and further.
I remember I had a goal. By December of 2020, my goal was to run the mile loop. So my PT, Abigail, and my high school coach, Finch, they both came down to run with me, and I wasn't fast at all, but I didn't stop, and I ran the mile, and at the finish line was a puppy.
So she just walked by everyone and grabbed the puppy, which was funny.
My memories, I've definitely found school to be a challenge, but
Yeah.
you know, I'm pushing through. My
Yeah.
memories definitely been affected.
It's an incredible thing to speak with someone that has emerged into unconsciousness beyond minimally conscious state. They won't remember you. They won't remember being in the intensive care unit. In Hannah, I remember visiting her at Spalding. I remember her smile. I remember saying how she was starting to eat. She was talking about rowing. That to me is just incredible. Because yes, we're seeing the brain recover. We're seeing their ability to create and recreate and relearn the ability to do all these things.
Roughly 1 out of 5 people who sustain a severe TBI will recover their independence, like Hannah. The other 4 out of 5 will need some level of care for the rest of their lives, ranging from help with finances or driving to, say, bathing or eating. A small fraction of those people will remain unconscious or minimally conscious, unable to engage with the world in a meaningful way. The knowledge of that possibility is a heavy weight for families and doctors in emergency rooms and ICUs.
It's not always the case that the decision to withdraw life-sustaining treatment is wrong. A person may have expressed, a wish prior to their injury that they, for example, would not want to live with a disability of any type. Express that to the family, and the family is respecting the person's wishes. I would make the case that it's wrong if the main reason we're doing that is we believe there's no hope for further recovery.
5 years after her injury, Hannah is living on her own in an apartment, and she's been able to find work doing something very meaningful to her.
I've been a rehab aide for the past 4 summers at Spalding, where I myself did therapy, and it's weird to just see some of the therapists who were helping me in my rehabilitation. Thanks to them, I can now help patients get back to their old life.
And she's also hoping to get back behind the wheel.
I think we have one thing on the list, and I think it's just driving. Once that gets my approval, and it's not yet, that will be the next step.
Something that has been really hard is what the injury has done to Hannah's ability to express emotion. She's not been able to have the release of crying about this traumatic experience.
Besides the driving, I just wanted to cry. That's that's it, probably.
For Hannah and her family, there is grief at what they've lost, and there is deep gratitude for what was saved. Saved by dedicated researchers, doctors, and therapists. People committed to giving everyone that same chance to live again. TBI Model System Centers provide coordinated and multidisciplinary care and conduct research to improve care and outcomes for people with brain injury. This video is a product of the Model Systems Knowledge Translation Center, in collaboration with the Spalding Harvard TBI Model System Center, funded by the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. To learn more about the work of the TBI Model System Centers, please visit msktc.org. Visit msktc.org for the entire Recovering from Disorders of Consciousness Hot Topic module. We'd like to offer our sincere appreciation to Hannah Strom and her parents, Gail and Thomas Strom, and to Theo Visco and his parents, Courtney and Jean Visco, for allowing us to share their stories.